The Oregon Treaty, signed on June 15, 1846, ending the joint occupation and making Oregons south of the 49th parallel American citizens, with those north of it becoming British. The Oregon Treaty was signed, negotiated by James Buchanan, Secretary of State. The Oregon Treaty set the border between the U.S. and the British North America at the 49th parallel, with the exception of Vancouver Island, which is retained by the British. The U.S. portion of the region was organized as Oregon Territory on August 15, 1848, with Washington Territory being formed from it in 1853. The British portion remained unorganized until 1958, when the colony of British Columbia was set up as a result of the Fraser Canyon Gold Rush. The Monroe Doctrine is a United States foreign policy position that opposes European colonization in the Western Hemisphere. It holds that any intervention in the political affairs of the Americas by foreign powers is a potential hostile act against the United States. The doctrine was central to American grand strategy in the 20th century. President James Monroe first anticipated the doctrine in December 2nd, 1823, during his 17th annual State of the Union address to Congress, though it would not be named after him until 1850. At the time, nearly all the Spanish colonies in the Americas had either achieved or were close to independence. Monroe asserted that the New World and the Old World were to remain distinctly different spheres of influence. Louisiana Purchase in 1803. The Louisiana Territory, a large mass of land, more than 800,000 square miles, was made up of the western Mississippi River Basin, passed from French colonial rule to Spanish colonial rule, and then back to the France before U.S. President Thomas Jefferson paid $27 million from Napoleon. Out of it were carved in their entirety the states of Louisiana, Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, along with most of Kansas, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and Minnesota. Exploring the land through the Louisiana Purchase gave Lewis and Clark something to do for many years to come. The Civil Rights Act of 1865, number 5, sometimes called the Enforcement Act or the Force Act, was United States federal law enacted during the Reconstruction era in response to civil rights violations against African Americans. The bill was passed by the 43rd Congress, signed into law by Ulysses Grant, March 1st, 1875. The act was designed to protect all citizens in their civil and legal rights, providing for equal treatment in public accommodations, public transportation, and prohibiting exclusions from jury service. Originally drafted by the Senator Charles Sumner in 1870, but was not passed until shortly after Sumner's death in 1975. The Battle of Gettysburg was a 3-day battle in the American Civil War, fought between the Union and Confederate forces between July 1st and July 3rd, 1863, and around Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. A battle which was won by the Union is widely considered the Civil War's turning point, ending the Confederacy's aspirations to establish an independent nation. It was the Civil War's bloodiest battle, claiming over 50,000 combined casualties over 3 days. Battle of Gettysburg, Union Major General Meade, Army of the Potomac, defeated attacks by Confederate General Robert E. Lee in Northern Virginia, halting Lee's invasion of the North and forcing his retreat. Declaration of Independence. More than a year after fighting broke out between colonial militia and British forces in April 1775, Continental Congress of Philadelphia finally decided to declare the independence of the North American colonies. The main goal of the document was adopted on July 4th, 1776, 4th of July, was to present the colonialist grievance against Great Britain. But it would be Thomas Jefferson's words, "We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equally," that would echo most strongly through generations to come. And the document that basically freed North America from the British rule. Number 4 on our list is October 6th, 1945, atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The United States detonated 2 atomic bombs over Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The bombings killed between 129,000 and 226,000 people, most of whom were civilians, and remained the only use of nuclear weapons in an armed conflict. Japan surrendered to the Allies August 15th, 6 days after the bombing of Nagasaki, and the Soviet Union's declaration of war against Japan and invasion of Japanese-occupied Manchuria. The Japanese government signed an instrument of surrender on October 2nd, effectively ending the war. The moon landing, or lunar landing, is the arrival of the spacecraft on the surface of the moon, including both crewed and robotic missions. The first human object to touch the moon was Luna II in 1959. In 1869, Apollo 2 was the first crewed mission to land on the moon. There were 6 crewed landings between 69 and 72, and numerous uncrewed landings. All crewed missions to the moon were conducted by the Apollo program, with the last departing the lunar surface on December 1972. After Luna 24 and 76, there were no soft landings on the moon until Change 3 in 2013. Vietnam War was a conflict in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia from November 1st, 1955 to the fall of Saigon in April 30th, 1975. It was the second major conflict of the Cold War. While the war was officially fought between North Vietnam and South Vietnam, the North was supported by the Soviet Union, China, and other communist states, while the South was supported by the United States and other anti-communist allies, making the war a proxy war between the United States and the Soviet Union. It lasted almost 20 years, with direct U.S. military involvement ending in 1973. The conflict also spilled over into neighboring states, exacerbating the Laotian Civil War and the Cambodian Civil War, which ended with all 3 countries officially becoming communist states. Number 1 on the list. April 14th, 1865, Abraham Lincoln, 16th President of the United States, was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth while attending the play Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. Shot in the head as he watched the play, Lincoln died of his wounds the following day at 7:22 a.m. in the Peterson House opposite the theater. He was the first U.S. president to be assassinated. His funeral and burial were marked by an extended period of national mourning. Near the end of the American Civil War, Lincoln's assassination was part of a larger conspiracy intended by Booth to revive the Confederate cause by eliminating the 3 most important officials of the federal government. Conspirators Lewis Powell, David Herold were assigned to kill Secretary of State William Stewart.